Gary Lineker's final match of the day is this weekend after stepping down for the BBC. He apologised after reposting a video on Instagram which had an anti-Semitic symbol.
Last week, I shared a post here on Instagram that contained an emoji that has awful connotations. Unfortunately, I did not see the emoji. If I had, I would never, ever have shared it.
Katie, should he have been staying out of politics?
It's very difficult because I don't think he would see it as being political. I think he'd see it as being human, and I think when he did retweet that post, I think it would have been in a moment of compelling passion. I don't think he would have been sat there thinking about his job and thinking about his contract and what he can and can't do. And I think sometimes that's what happens when you're
when
very
you've got
passionate.
1.5 million followers and you repost something that has an anti-Semitic symbol on it, perhaps you should be thinking more. And I think that's my own...
I think you're coming from a very
Gary's
logical and you know, we're sat here, we're talking about this morning, and you're right, and that's from a very logical, rational place. Most people's phones are, you know, fingertips, on the move, travelling around.
But he carries a responsibility because he's a public figure.
He does, and he said, I got it wrong, and I'm sorry. But I think, you know, he's very passionate about these subjects and he's not perfect. We're all flawed as humans. I'm sure he regrets what that emoji means, but I'm sure his stance on that subject
and his apology
the same.
was great, and he has stepped down from what he was doing, which I think is quite sad.
I just cannot believe that he wouldn't know what the emoji meant.
I didn't know what that
he
emoji
said
meant.
we have to believe what it is that he said, and he said that he didn't know.
OK.
And you know, when you have a weight of responsibility, when you are a public figure, not just somebody who has a large following, but somebody who is a public figure, you do have to take responsibility for the things that you tweet. So I'll use it as an example. In the job that I have, in my other job working on the news, I have to be exceptionally careful about anything that I post on social media, because if I take one foot wrong, there's a chance that I could lose my job. And I love what I do, and I have bills to pay, and I have a family to look after. So I have to think very carefully, because I understand what it is to be not just a public figure, but somebody that works in journalism. So why does it make it different for somebody else that is a public figure?
But isn't the problem with Gary Lineker, he didn't work in journalism. He was a brilliant football expert.
Still is.
If my dad was alive today, he'd be saying, why does Gary Lineker feel compelled to spew out all his views on political issues, on you know, human rights and every injustice going on in the world? I think a lot of football fans would surely feel, just stick to football, because that's why we love you and that's why we were all following you.
But I don't necessarily... What do you think, Cole? I don't necessarily think that he should stick to sport. I think he's an individual and he can talk about the things that he wants. And he's passionate about it, but he is under contract at the BBC.
But he's got a different contract to journalists.
I think he's...
I get that, but go on.
Thanks. I think he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't.
Right.
I think all celebrities are. If you don't make a statement about something, you're slammed for it. It's like, oh, you don't care and it's all about you and why aren't you sticking up for this, that and the other? And then if you do, you're slammed for why don't you just stick to being a celebrity? Like, you can't win. And the thing is, you know, I think he was passionate about what he said and did make a mistake with, and, you know, and I think it was great he made an apology. He can't do any more than that. But I think no matter if you're on telly, off telly or whatever, we're all human beings and we're all entitled to our own opinions. And that's what social media is for. You know, we have, as everyone keeps saying, you know, freedom of speech. But it seems that we haven't nowadays, because you can be cancelled with one emoji.
But with freedom of speech comes responsibility, especially if you've got
more
than millions of... Well, I would say that if you're going to comment on a contentious issue like war in the Middle East, double and triple check before you send a reaction or a retweet. I really would.
I think, well, if you've got with great numbers of followers comes great responsibility. I think especially when you work for a public service broadcaster.